Welcome to Brookfield Perspectives, a podcast that explores the Brookfield ecosystem's role in creating sustainable wealth on a global scale. Today, we have another edition of Deal Debrief, where we get the download on recent transactions from the people who put them together. On today's episode, we'll unpack Brookfield's recent investment in the OpenAI Deployment Company, or DeployCo, and how combining OpenAI's technology with Brookfield's operating expertise can support AI enterprise deployment at scale. Anuj, Dave, welcome to the podcast. I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves. Anuj, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Meredith. My name is Anuj Ranjan. I am the CEO of the private equity business at Brookfield, where I'm really focused on growing our presence in our core sectors like industrials or asset-heavy services, and also investing in key technology that support those sectors.
My name is David Bonasia, and I'm a managing partner within the private equity group where I lead our America's Value Creation team. And I also lead the Brookfield-wide AI Value Creation Office, which is a group of about 40 senior leaders across all Brookfield platforms that is catalyzing the use of AI across Brookfield, both internally and within our portfolio companies.
Well, that is definitely the topic of the day. I don't think I go more than a couple hours now every day without hearing those buzzwords. So we're here to talk about OpenAI and their deployment company they recently announced, or DeployCo, as I hear in the lexicon, we're calling it now. So for those who may be less familiar, can we give a broad overview of why OpenAI might need a deployment company and what they're trying to solve with that? Dave, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I think today, part of the need for the deployment company is really around the models, and the technology is no longer the bottleneck. The quality is excellent. The capabilities are excellent. The bottleneck is really around the capability and capacity to integrate that technology into businesses. And that's a complex problem that involves change management, understanding operational processes, and understanding where that technology can really add value. So many organizations are experimenting with AI, but few have deployed it at scale because this is the bottleneck in the capacity. And I think DeployCo, it's not uncommon for technology businesses to have a capability to do this. They know the technology best, and they should know their customers best. And so there's a natural fit for a business like OpenAI to develop its DeployCo entity.
Yeah, I just add the AI race is really shifting from invention to execution, like Dave just said. For the last few years, the conversation around AI has been all about which model is best. The next phase is really about deployment capability, and OpenAI know this, and we know this. The bottleneck's no longer what can the tech do. It's about whether companies can actually embed it into their daily workflows, they can change behavior or generate measurable business outcomes. And that's why an OpenAI DeployCo really has a very big right to exist.
And as I have read about, and you've also educated me, this deal is a partnership between OpenAI and Brookfield and other companies as well, other leading investment firms. So when you guys think about it from the Brookfield perspective, what comes to mind for you that you feel is a unique vantage point?
Yeah, I think AI value will accrue now to the best implementers, not just the biggest spenders in technology. And what gets a lot of headlines is it's a CapEx arms race. That's true. But those who implement the technology best across their portfolio, I think, is where you'll see the most benefits, the productivity gains, and the most value creation. And that's what Dave and his team have been doing with us at Brookfield more broadly across the board, is finding ways to implement. We genuinely think the companies that will create the most value from AI will not be the ones that spend the most money on it. It'll be the ones that use it best with the right data, the right governance, the right operating discipline, and the right change management.
I think that's a great point. And what I'd add to that, if you take a step back and you think about what Brookfield is in our DNA, we are an owner-operator first company with deep operating expertise. That is our strategy and has been our strategy for decades. And we can apply that in the realm of technology use cases, but that's just how we think actually about operating businesses generally. When you have that powerful combination of frontier AI model capability combined with deep operating expertise that has large portfolios of businesses, and we have the experience of driving value creation, that's the powerful combination that Brookfield brings to the DeployCo situation.
Yeah, I'm sensing this inflection point as this deep operating in the trenches expertise over long periods of time and this relatively new horizon for how to implement AI into those systems and the change management that ultimately will be required to do that. and the learning flywheel that will rapidly accelerate around that. How do we think about that role for DeployCo and this next phase as it relates to our portfolio companies, our broader installation base across Brookfield? Dave, how are we starting to think about that?
We believe AI and technology is foundational to value creation, and we don't see it as a separate work stream or implementing AI for AI's sake. What we start with is, what is the strategy of a business? What are the strategic priorities or pain points of that business? And then where can technology fit within that priority set to get there faster and ideally achieve bigger results? That's the model and messaging when we engage with our portfolio companies, which we are highly active in doing across Brookfield. That's the starting point in the messaging. So that's a process that we're taking all our portfolio companies through in terms of where can AI support your existing value creation plans.
Yeah, I'd say we at Brookfield, we're bringing the operating muscle. OpenAI is bringing frontier technology. We're bringing the operating muscle and the ability to apply that tech inside real businesses at real scale.
And as you're alluding to, again, it's not one size fits all. Every company is different. The things that they encounter are different. The way they might apply this layer of technology, or in a way, it's almost like a new capability in and of itself. A lot of times when we talk about certain transactions or sectors, we look at things, as you say, very long term, sometimes 5, 10, many years in the future. But the velocity of AI and the change that it creates, sometimes it's happening in much shorter increments. So how have we thought about this next frontier of value creation as it relates to this technology and the time horizon for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think ultimately looking at how AI can create value is maybe a little bit different of a time horizon concept. I would say what's most important, because there is a lot of hype out there and these technologies are not free. There is a cost to them. The important piece is actually around discipline, around thinking through where an opportunity may lie. What is the actual business case? What are we actually trying to solve? What is the potential cost to achieve it? Really deeply understanding a process and having a view of, if I do this project, what is the benefit I'm going to get? And frankly, that's more of a broader like capital allocation thinking that we think about that at Brookfield in every aspect, whether it's making new investments or implementing value creation projects. So that's where we come at it, is like, we need to do this in a defined, highly disciplined way. Of course, there's going to be some experimentation and some stuff's not going to work. But if you do it in a disciplined way, you'll be able to understand where things are working and where things are not working, so you can pivot quickly. That's how we think about it. And I think because we are early stages and things are still evolving, we prefer to look at AI projects that have, I'll call it 1 to 3 year paybacks, as opposed to like really long-term paybacks that ultimately become a pipe dream. Unless there is something that we believe there is real high value at stake, we may think about a bit of a longer term duration, but that's how I would size it up.
Yeah, I think the next 5 years is really about building that enterprise muscle memory. We're still very early, but it's less about individual tools and it's more about building the capability as an organization to use these tools properly in the right way, so that as an organization, we keep doing it, we get better at it, and we're able to, as it gets more and more impactful to our business, we're able to deploy it at scale and much faster than we would have been able to in the past without doing it. So a lot of this work is to build that natural enterprise muscle memory that allows us to implement it at scale in the future.
I think that's a great point, and really is also part of the thesis why we have our AI value creation office at Brookfield. Because this is a new technology, there is some level of uncertainty and lack of understanding. It's just natural. It's new. But by coming at it with a programmatic way across Brookfield, where the entire platform is involved, thinking about opportunities both internally and in portfolio companies, tracking regularly all of the use cases and learnings such that we can actually cross-learn and cross-share across the business. Where did people have successes? Where did people have failures? Despite the fact that we have different platforms at Brookfield, there still is fungibility across use cases. Every business, whether it's real estate, renewables, or private equity, has a back office, finance, HR, etc. Many businesses, regardless of sector, have customer support or customer experience. And we're also a heavy asset business group. We have a lot of asset management, asset maintenance work. And so how do we bring commonality and scalability across AI use cases is foundational to how we're thinking about it at Brookfield.
And this Brookfield ecosystem phenomenon, we've examined it a lot. How can something in maybe one part of the business that doesn't seem very connected to another actually translate or apply? I'm curious, have there been any learnings or things that have stuck out to you, especially in this early phase of so much ingestion of knowledge or this test Q&A phase? What has lasted in terms of some of the things that have come up you had no idea that would happen, or you're really surprised at some of the things we're uncovering?
Yeah, there's a few different components. I would say what we found is number one, you actually have the most success when there is buy-in from the most senior leaders in the organization. Like this can't be an IT-led initiative. It has to be a CEO, CFO, COO-led initiative. Second piece would be around actually like existing data and systems really matter. The value of the AI is really only as good as the foundational data and systems and workflows of a company. So sometimes you actually have to do some upfront foundational work before you can start realizing the value. But in our learnings, that's actually quite a good investment and momentum builds from there. And then maybe a little more specific on like the use case piece, where we've seen a bunch of cross value across the Brookfield ecosystem, actually in a bunch of different parts of the business. If you think in our private equity business, we own many industrial companies. There's a lot of common use cases across machine vision and quality, supply chain and inventory optimization, and asset maintenance. So that's been great. And maybe another example, if I take our renewables business, we have many portfolio companies that are wind renewable businesses. So we've found use cases in one business that we can actually have our other portfolio companies replicate very quickly, and they're very fungible. So that's how we're thinking about how do we bring the Brookfield ecosystem to bear.
Anuj, what about you? Anything stick out for you? I know you're a very avid user of AI now, personally, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dave covered it well. I'd say across the business, we're finding these pockets of opportunity that are actually now providing some real fruit. Sometimes it's hard to quantify. People always want to know, how do you quantify or contextualize the actual result? But it's allowing us to do many things much faster. It's allowing us to make less mistakes. And all of that is definitely adding to the bottom line in many of the businesses that we own.
Do you foresee, we'll call it more of these deploy co-consortiums coming to bear across different models or different ways of working? Do you think these will proliferate the way other technology platforms have, or it's still too early days to tell?
It's hard to predict what will take place in the future, but I would look more at historically what's happened with certain large-scale technologies. So if you think about ERPs, which have been around for 40 years, enormous companies have been built off of nothing other than deploying ERP technology in enterprise. And it's lasted many decades. And even today, most companies don't know how to deploy an ERP in their organization. Even today, technology has been around for 40 years. Most of us still have to call in someone to come in and deploy that technology in our organization for us. And so I think there is a huge runway and a huge opportunity for actually implementing AI in enterprise, which is not a short-term gap. It's a long-term gap that's going to exist forever. As long as the technology keeps growing and keeps advancing, I think individuals and enterprises will keep needing help to get the most out of it. Because what we're doing today, we might think that we have a certain goal with what we want to do with the technology, but that might just be scratching the surface of what the technology can actually do. And we may find that we are able to do a lot more with the technology than we thought, and therefore keep needing the type of help that a deploy co would bring. So I think the universe or the TAM of this market is enormous.
Yeah, I'd add on to that in the context of that's part of our thesis around DeployCo is, as Anuj said, the TAM here could be enormous because if you look at ERP, if you look at cloud migration, typically if there's $1 of technology spend, the dollars of service and DeployCo type revenue that attach to that is typically multiples, and it is often recurring or semi-recurring. So that formed part of the thesis of why we actually think that this could be a very large scale business and would support both the strategic benefits of it, but also the economic returns of the investment.
I'm going to ask you a one-on-one question for some of our listeners. What is an ERP?
An ERP is an enterprise resource planning system, and think of it as the backbone that keeps a business operating and gives management one portal to their entire data set. So whether it's finance and accounting, procurement, inventory, supply chain, HR, sales, whether a company buys materials, pays suppliers, tracks inventory, all of that data can be accessed from one single source of truth.
So, one final question. There's been a lot in the news recently, and there's a lot, as you say, in these early phases about the development of AI infrastructure and what is required to even help power these models themselves. And we've been talking today a lot about then this additional layer that happens around deployment. How do we actually deploy AI in a lot of operational contexts? And I'm curious, how maybe do you think about that inflection point, or how might people in our industry think about it?
Yeah, infrastructure and deployment are, I think, two sides of the same AI flywheel. You need infrastructure to enable adoption, but as that adoption scales, it creates more demand for infrastructure. And so this is really a flywheel that sits tandem and hand in hand with each other, the two sides of the same coin.
Great. Now I know a lot more about DeployCo. Thank you both for joining us today. It was great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Brookfield Perspectives. Make sure to follow us wherever you listen. You'll be the first to hear when new episodes drop.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute an offer to sell or a solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or related financial instruments offered or sponsored by Brookfield. The information and views discussed are subject to change without notice. Any investment involves significant risks, including loss of the entire investment.
Audiation.